Welcome to Sacred, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your intuition, resist exploitive systems, and remember the love that brought you to teaching and caregiving in the first place.
We are your hosts,
Angela Carolina Garcia
and Lauren Staubel. Join us on a rough and tumble journey of reckoning and transformation. And before we do jump into that rough and tumble journey, let's pause and take a moment to arrive. So wherever you're tuning in from, if you're driving, do not close your eyes, of course, but if it feels right to close your eyes, please do so now, or you could just look down and then bring your attention to your breath. Where I live right now, it's very windy, and so air element is very present in my awareness. It's inviting us to pay attention to the breath and its wind-like qualities. So as you're breathing in, feel the breath, and maybe even, we do this in yoga class sometimes, and it might feel a little funny if you're in public, you might be embarrassed, but you could try to curl your tongue and breathe in through your tongue. And you can feel the cool air hitting your tongue on its way in. And then letting the breath land wherever it lands in your body, and then breathing out. If you liked the cool breath with your tongue curled, then keep doing that. And if not, let it go. And breathe in again. And see if you can feel the wind-like qualities of the breath moving through your nose, your throat, all the way down to your belly. And maybe even kind of swirling around, enlivening your organs, or maybe even quieting your organs, whatever you need right now. And then follow the breath with your awareness back out. And take this breath like this, just following the breath in, noticing how it moves through the body, and then exhaling it back out. You can even play a little bit. If the first way you paid attention to your breath actually felt uncomfortable or awkward, you might try a different way to pay attention to your breath. Maybe let it move a little bit slower, or a little bit warmer, or a little bit faster. And then as you're ready, bringing your awareness back into the physical space where you are right now. Maybe you're ready to open your eyes if they were closed, or look up whenever you're ready. And then if there are other people in your space, you might make eye contact and smile. Hi, Angela.
Hi.
So good to see you. Thanks for arriving with us, everybody. It's been a long time.
So long. Hello, everyone.
That we did try to record an episode for you, maybe more than a month ago now, but we had some technology issues, and we just accepted that it was not the right time to share our voice with you. So here we are again. We're back.
Yeah. I'm glad we were able to find the time and the energy.
Yeah. Angela, how is love in your life today? That's one of our 3 provocations.
That's a good one. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about love lately. I read, or maybe it was on Instagram, I'm not actually sure. Maybe it was in the book I was reading, but it said something along the lines of, it was like talking about how mercy and love are entangled. And I don't remember what the quote was, and I don't remember where I read it. But it's been a lot about mercy. It was like the main point was love is mercy.
So it like reciprocally, or is it like showing mercy, receiving mercy, like having?
Yeah, I remember it was, well, this is what happened. So it was talking about how mercy is love, or actually, it was in relationship. It's coming. Thank you for that. It was in relationship to marriage, and
Oh.
how in marriage mercy is love, or love is
Mm,
mercy, in a marriage. And I think it stuck with me a lot because I tend to see different relationships, and I think of my own past relationships, and like the differences between cultures in this relationship, and then like this westernized way of, or maybe it's not even westernized, maybe it's actually like modern or Christian. I don't actually know.
mm,
But there's like this like very specific way that like I was taught to think of what love was, or what it should feel like in a marriage.
mm,
And my parents' marriage does not resemble that vision in
mm,
my head. But my parents' marriage resembled a lot of mercy
mm,
when I think of their relationship and who they are to each other, like as a couple, versus like who they are as my parents, but like who they are to each other as a couple.
mm,
And that's like brought me a lot of peace, of like, oh, I have no idea actually of what that thing is, because like my past relationships, there were these like rules that I'd been thinking a lot about, and like how my parents' relationship didn't embody those things. And but now that like I view their marriage in this other way, I have a lot of reverence for it now, in a very different way than I'd experienced it before. And so, to your question, love is currently undoing me.
Oh, wow. I had to look up the word mercy because I was
I
like, I
love.
don't actually know what that means. Like, I think I know what it means, but what does it actually mean according to the dictionary?
Oh,
So Merriam-Webster says the first definition is compassion, leniency, or restraint as in imposing punishment. That's for restraint. Shown especially to an offender or to one subject to the power of another. Then also it means lenient or compassionate treatment. Let's see. Oh, I'm skipping over a couple that seem irrelevant here. A blessing that is an act of divine favor or compassion, a fortunate circumstance, compassionate treatment of those in distress. Those are really like very broad applications of that
yeah. And it's
thing.
interesting because in Christianity, which is what I grew up in, there's this like, God is mercy.
Yeah.
And recently I was at a Quran reading group,
Mhm.
and we didn't know what to read that day because we like ended up only being three people, or three women with lots of little babies running around us, which was very sweet. Um, and one of them said, actually, I've been wanting to learn the 100 names for Allah slash
Mhm.
God. And I'd never thought about any of that
Mhm.
in my life. But many of the names are, or at least two of them for sure, because I remember writing them, was God is mercy, and then God is the most merciful. So it's like two different
Oh.
names, but the same name. But
Mhm.
as you were reading the definition, I was like, oh, that's interesting how, like, in those definitions you read, it actually described like all of the 100 names that I had recently written down.
Mhm.
Um, and it's funny because I grew up like thinking a lot about mercy,
Mhm.
but never like giving mercy, but like receiving mercy. And only from God. Like, God is the one who
Yeah,
gives mercy.
I see.
But in the thing that I read, it was actually more in relationship to like, how do we give it to each other
Mm.
as a representation of love?
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, that's a really makes me think about like unconditional love. And as we're thinking about the words I'm looking, I always have the quote, Bell Hooks quote in front of me
Oh,
when we record. And
oh,
she says like the light of love is always in us, no matter how cold the flame It's always present, waiting for the spark to ignite, waiting for the heart to awaken and call us back to the first memory of being the life force inside a dark place, waiting to be born. And I feel we use darkness, right, as a metaphor of like, well, you even brought up something about shadow work, right,
Mm.
when we were chatting earlier, that I wonder, even like someone's in a position where I guess somebody has to have more power in order to show mercy, right? It seems like there's like a this not a equal in that situation, which I guess is almost like naturally when someone makes a mistake and hurts somebody else,
Yeah.
right? Like the other person that was hurt may or may not have more power, but if the person who did the hurting, it matters if that person wants forgiveness or wants desires the mercy, but maybe you even have to you need self-love in order to want the mercy or deem oneself worthy of mercy or and even to be able to give it. So now I'm wondering about like, oh, that dark place where there's a rupture, then it calls us to practice self-love in this. I mean, that example really then it's like, okay, our next the idea we've been playing with is discernment. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, wait, is this a moment? I mean, what? This is a very deep. Thank you. This is very like what mercy is different than forgiveness.
So different.
And it's
Yeah.
more like forgiveness. We do actually. My husband and I were going. We applied for to be pre-adoptive parents, and we had to do this whole interview. And one of the questions they ask is there anything that you wouldn't be able to forgive the child for?
Mm.
And we were like, what? Like, we were like, but that there's like an intrinsic problem with that question because forgiveness is really about setting ourselves free from resentment or like allowing ourselves to feel better because someone never came to apologize or that gets forgiveness really is about our own experience and we don't need the other person even to be there in order to practice forgiveness. I can practice forgiveness by lighting a candle in a room by myself. Whereas mercy is very relational and you really maybe can't do it without the other person knowing,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, yeah.
so like, what do you to show mercy says yes to something. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're choosing yes,
Mm-hmm.
like you have to discern, like, do I want to be saying yes? And do I want to, right? Do,
Mm-hmm.
is my heart strong enough to risk this happening again? Or is my heart strong enough to know this is the last time I'll accept this?
Oh,
Or is
yeah.
this right? Like,
And then surrender's like right here asking for lots of attention.
yeah, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It makes me think of I was actually last week I was teaching a mentor class in English and Spanish and doing it in both languages with two different teachers and two separate groups of students has done wildly amazing things for my own ability to teach and learn.
Hmm.
but but the topic was it was on uh, 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 bias, and then there's implicit bias, and how do you know biases in yourself to be able to be a mentor for others.
Hmm.
And this is in the context of mentorship within family child care programming.
Hmm.
But the thing that came back in the English class and in the Spanish class, and I got to teach the same content for both, which doesn't tend to usually happen, but it it went back to a lot of like you need to know yourself well enough
Hmm.
to know to be able to find where that like discernment is or like where that like buoyancy is and also accepting that it's not hypocritical of oneself that one day it feels one way and another day it feels differently if the way that you show mercy or the way that you receive mercy or forgiveness as you mentioned that like it's going to be different because the context is different all of the time. And that doesn't make you a hypocrite. That just makes you like, makes me think of like water
Mm,
and the way that water embraces us. You know, in the first episode with Sister Yoli,
mm,
we talked about water, and the way that it like holds so much.
mm,
And throughout themes throughout the podcast, we've also talked about Mother Earth
mm,
and the way that like she embraces us no matter how much it actually destroys her.
mm,
She continuously shows mercy on us.
mm.
I don't know if she forgives us.
And she wreaks havoc on us too.
Right.
She's
but
like,
we're
don't get too self-centered, folks.
yeah.
This,
Right. But we're still here, right? And we're still
mm,
able
mm,
to plant and we're still able to create, like whether they're good things or destructive things, those things still happen.
mm,
Um, yeah.
mm.
So, and it's just like, yeah, yeah, that's,
Mm. That makes me think actually like that our thesis for this season, when we surrender to something greater than ourselves, this is something that we're working with, right? I don't know if we've said this explicitly to listeners, but hey,
yeah.
listeners, we envision an early childhood space in which people who practice all different religions can come together, stay spiritual in their own self, in their own body, in their own heart, while they're together in a room full of other people who may practice different religions. And so spirituality being something that's more accessible to everybody than religion, because religion is very specific
Mm-hmm.
application of spirituality. And some people, I apologize if that wasn't a carefully thought out thing that I just said. But spirituality does seem like a place where we can connect more easily than religion. So that sentence, when we surrender to something greater than ourselves, I'm even just thinking about water. Like, can water be the thing? Like, water is more powerful than us, unless it's in a cup and we're drinking it, right? It's like, but like the
Right.
ocean is way more powerful than us. A river is way more powerful than us. So if we surrender to the power of water
Mm-hmm.
or the power of God or the power of a deity that
Mm-hmm.
that we use for spiritual inspiration, that is very open ended. But that surrender piece is like where Mother Nature has the power to destroy us in a split second, like lightning
Mm-hmm.
strikes, and that could be the end of us. But
Mm-hmm.
but we don't stop living our
Mm-hmm.
lives, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
keep going. And even though that risk, is a part of where was I the other day? Oh, it was a yoga class. I love my teacher, Corinne. She was like, she said something about how we're always dying. Like we're always moving towards death. Like that is what's happening. And we
Mm-hmm.
just had holidays in which death is a central theme,
Yes.
in this part of the world at least. And so we have to surrender if we're going to live fully.
Right.
And so if we're going to surrender, and that thing what we choose to surrender to is important to each of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's whatever that is. How do you know what it is for you? Is because it allows you to feel safe enough or like brave enough to play with love, like we were just talking about. Show someone mercy. I mean, I have trouble with that. And practice discernment. Like that is not discernment. Is like we were been thinking about a few episodes back what discernment looks like in leadership.
Yeah.
And like we're working with people in early childhood, we're working with people's hearts all the time. I always tell my students, and I'm sure I've said this a gazillion times here, that I hope that I have said in most of my students' first or second class, you're here because your heart won't let you do something else.
Yeah.
And so in order to continue to show up in our field, we need we need to practice surrender
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we need play and we need love.
Yeah.
We're not going to survive in the field without those things.
Right. Right. And there's proof of it, right? When you think of the immense amount of burnout, when you even think of, like, when I think of 2020 and all of the statistics that came out around how many teachers left the field, when I look at my story of how we left the field and and like our the way the conditions of our health were, because and like that's what led us to leave.
Mm-hmm.
um and
The classroom, to leave the classroom.
yeah, we left the classroom,
Well,
thank
the
you.
littles, the classrooms for the littles.
Yes, for the little ones, and we went to work with the
Yeah.
adults. um but when you look at, like, well, why did they leave and how did they leave, right? Like the evidence shows like they weren't able to play anymore.
Yeah.
Or like there wasn't a space to cultivate love, and
Mm-hmm.
love in like whatever that looks like or whatever that means within the context of working with young children.
Mm-hmm.
um, which one makes me very sad, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's not the intention, and I don't even think that that's the intention of scalability, of growing, of good school systems, of accountability systems, of hierarchical systems, right? Like, I think all of those things have invited us to sort of organize the world, or in this case, a classroom, for proficiency, for outcome, for standardization. But in doing so, it has taken away the love and the play that's really essential to being able to do the work of working with young children.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of our conversation with Dr. Kia about taking back public spaces for play,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because play requires space. And when every minute is planned, then that's not play. It also makes me think of, well, when we think of healing, right, that also requires space. Thinking about why are we all in need of healing, right? It's like, okay, well, there is the human condition. We came into the world in these bodies. Like we have these bodies that they
Right.
they make it so that we experience all kinds of things. But
Mm-hmm,
this is special kind of flavor in our field.
mm-hmm,
I wonder, thinking about a lot of our guests actually, Dr. Lee's work, Junlei Lee, his research looks at that small interactions between caregivers and children in under-resourced. So he says, the child's ability to express the need and the caregiver's capacity to meet the need
mm-hmm,
is what's
mm-hmm.
needed for that relationship to develop, which happens even in very under-resourced places. You don't need fancy toys. You don't need pretty baskets. Like one of the studies that he gave a presentation on that I saw was an orphanage in China, and even though this caregiver has to change the diapers of, I don't know, 10 babies or maybe even more and feed them all, she still has the serve and return going on with those babies. And he told this story of his daughter, which if you didn't listen to the episode with Dr. Lee, it was episode 1 in season 2. It's such a beautiful episode, especially the end where he shares the story about his daughter.
Yeah.
But there's something about this, the flavor of of the conditions that we're trying to do beautiful things in at least in our experience in the field of early childhood
Right.
education as it is now. And especially when there's a profit attempting to be made,
Mm-hmm.
it means that teachers don't get breaks. So they don't Nobody comes when they need to use the bathroom even. And these stories haven't ended. The pandemic happened, they got worse, but my students are still sharing stories like that. And
Yeah.
sometimes they need to switch their practicum sites because of exploitation at their first site, or explicit racism, even to this day. And with administrators who don't know what to do about that, and then
Yeah.
they don't, there's this disequilibrium about it. So in order to survive in our field, there is a surrender. But I'm just also saying, okay, so we surrender, but that's not the end, right? It's
Right.
like, we're like, well, I'm choosing love. Therefore, okay, maybe I'll practice mercy today. Kind of discerning like when and when that's right. Do I have the capacity for that today, this year, whatever it is? And then we surrender. So we say, okay, I did that. I surrender to whatever the outcome is. But now we're saying, then reclaiming is alchemized from an intention or intellectual pursuit into presence as healing.
Mm-hmm.
So in all of this, it's not like we're not being like, okay, first we do this, then we do that. That first we practice love, then we discern, and then we surrender. Poof. I'm healed. But that presence piece is so important, and the intellectual pursuit piece is so important. That's Goldie Muhammad's choice of language for curriculum, and I love that because, right, intention, intellectual pursuit is very cognitive, and we do, like, if we're going to change who we are in a way that we want to, then we have to actually make a decision and practice discernment about the me I want to lean into, or accept the me I am. Know that the me I was is still a part of me, but
Yeah.
being present with all of that, being present in the act of love. It's not just an act of love because I think I'm supposed to. It's an act of love and being present and being like, ooh, that hurts. Like, oh, I'm going to move through this. I might need to take a break even. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to move forward with this mercy thing until after therapy next week. Like, or like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to solve that problem with my coworker until next week. But I'm not going to wait until next year, and I'm not just going to wait until we're not on the same team anymore and try to forget that it ever happened. It's like,
Right.
okay, we're not just talking about love here. We're talking about colleagues. We're talking about families. We're like, this. If you're in this, you're in it.
Yeah.
We are a
Yeah.
network of human beings
Yeah.
serving our tiniest humans.
Yeah. And that's a deep truth that we as people who continue to show up no matter what, like whether spirit has called you and has said this is your work and you keep doing it. If some reason you thought becoming an entrepreneur in early childhood there was going to make lots of money in it, there are some places you can. I'm not saying that you can't make lots of money in the field. I'm sure there are ways. But when you choose to be in the space of caring for babies and caring for the mothers of those babies and the mothers that are the teachers of those babies, and mothers in whatever that means to people, one, I believe that if that's what you've been called to do, if that is what your heart's desire is, then within you, there's the capacity to hold it. And there's the capacity to find the mercy for it. Because if not, like you would just be like someone that works in the stock market or someone that works in an electric field. I don't know. A different field that
Doesn't
is not.
require your heart so much.
It doesn't need a lot of your heart. Exactly. So like that's one.
It does require some of them. That does require a lot of surrender, but maybe in a different kind. Different kind.
Yes. Fair enough. And right. And in the context of like care, there must be, right? Like if we're surrendering to something greater than us, then that means also believing that you'll have the capacity to find what you need to be able to do it. Not
Mm.
that that's
Yes.
easy.
Yes. Can we
Like,
go in there for a
yes.
little bit? I
Like,
feel
and
like
not,
that's so
yes.
important.
And it's, yes. And it's not easy, right? Like, you're not being able to go to the bathroom. You're probably getting paid $10 an hour if you're lucky. And if you happen to be in New Mexico at a really good program, you might be making $21 an
Mhm.
hour. And that's like the average, right? Like, I'm not talking about extreme circumstances, but that's about the average in our field. There, I have to believe, and even in the way that I move in the world, and the thing that comes back every time I tap into surrender when it comes to my teaching practice and my caregiving practice and my loving practice is the capacity is in there somehow. So,
Mm.
like, that's one part of it. And then the other part of it is the surrendering to believing that that's there.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Like, to
this is the thing.
surrender,
Yes.
yes, to surrender to knowing that that's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I think that in a world where we have been asked to organize things, to create data, to
Mm.
standardize, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense to a funder.
Mhm.
The teachers will find the capacity because they love the kids. That's not a data point that anybody's going to make any money off of.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
but there is that piece of I believe that I will be resourced enough to continue to do this work. And I don't know how, and I don't know what that is, but I'm going to intentionally do the work, right? Like, that's the reckoning.
Mhm.
Like, if every day I am choosing to show up to my classroom to take care of my 22 babies
Mhm.
and all of their parents and the co-teachers that I have been assigned and the teaching assistants
Mhm.
that are may or may not show up and the administrators that may or may not have a new deadline for something that
Or
they
may or may not
want.
accurately describe what's happening in your classroom when they walk through with potential
Yes,
families.
exactly. When all that happens, um, it must be something like you have to. I'm gonna tell a story now so that I can articulate so that what I'm trying to say comes out. But we have the decision to make the choice to show up every day. And if we're choosing to show up every day, that means we have to do our best to show up the best way we can every day. That's like the reckoning with oneself. And I remember when I was in the last classroom that I worked in, and it wasn't, no, it was the year before the last classroom I worked in. I remember, and I've said this story before, and I'm sure I've said it in one of the in one of the seasons. I remember I was so grumpy. And it's because the conditions were ridiculous and nobody could change them. I'm sure that
Mm.
someone was trying. I know for a fact that the whole school was trying to make the conditions better. The intentions were to make the conditions better.
Mm.
But from a physical standpoint and from an emotional standpoint, it wasn't happening. And
Mm.
so I drank a lot. I
Mm.
remember I drank a lot, and a lot of teachers drink a lot of alcohol.
Mhm.
It's wild statistics, but that is the truth.
Mhm.
And I remember noticing what was making me grumpy and why. And it was one day that something inside of me said, girl, those babies deserve a much better version of you.
Mhm.
And so I told myself I'm not allowed to drink unless it's Thursday or Saturday when I'm not going to be with kids the following day.
Mhm.
And that's probably like the beginning of the journey to not consuming alcohol or whatever I am in that relationship of my life with that coping mechanism.
Mm.
Um, but that's like the work that one has to do. Like there's the discernment of how to be in relationship with others, and then there's the internal discernment of how am I really going to care for myself?
Mm,
and reckoning with that, because sometimes we blame the conditions, but also, are we putting our best foot forward
mm,
to be able to show up, because the conditions may not change.
mm,
But I do have the sense of agency to sit, to notice the pattern in my own behavior that is destructive and choose to change that or not.
mhm,
And for some reason, when you reckon with that, the magic of surrender creates more capacity.
mhm, mm. Yeah, but there's the absence of resistance.
Mm,
Resistance takes so much energy.
mm-hmm,
For me, I
mm-hmm.
resist a lot. I have resistance is a thing I know really well. I know what it feels like. I have a hard time letting go of it. I have to work at that. It is palpably, it's palpable when when it
Mm-hmm,
finally like lets it go of its grip, or I let
mm-hmm.
go of my grip. Like I don't know which it is.
Fair.
But it is that, but we do set the intention. We do
Mm-hmm,
make a cognitive decision of
yeah.
like, I want to do this differently, or I want to do this better, or when I
Mm-hmm.
show up tomorrow with the kids, I want to be this way instead.
Right.
That, there's always that student who it sets us into disequilibrium. There are many throughout my career, and it took me a long time and finally figured out how to do it. Obviously, there's a book now, but it wasn't because it came easily to me at
Yeah.
all. It was because I was like, I don't like the way I feel after I handle that situation. That was not effective at all. Like that, the way that I tried to handle the challenging behaviors, it just keeps happening, either or I end up in a power struggle. Like that just doesn't. Oh, there's power again.
Oh.
Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ooh, how does mercy? What is mercy's role in a power struggle?
Oh.
And does the child really have more power? That's always, people say things like the child is so manipulative, but somebody once told me you're only being manipulated if you don't know it's happening. So if you're
Right.
naming it, probably they're not being manipulative,
You know.
trying to get
Right.
what they want in the best way they know how.
Right.
But
Right. It's
sorry about the digression
yeah.
there.
No, I was reading. I'm taking a class on Tuesday morning, and they sent the people that are hosting sent over the prompt by the speaker, and the speaker shared a story. And this is a story about a son and a very sick dad, and the son lives in the city. And I'm totally going to botch the story, and I'm going to ruin it for anybody that's listening. And I don't know who the author of the story is. I just know that someone told us to read it, and so I did. And the author isn't named. That's why I don't know. But so then the very ill dad who lives in the village called his young son who lives in the city, who has a job, says, I need you to come. I need you to come. I need you to come. And the son comes, and he's very annoyed by this. But he shows up and he does it. And the dad says, together we're going to build a new hut. And so they get to work and they build this new hut right next to the dad's hut. And it's beautiful. And the dad's really is getting more sick throughout the time. And eventually the son finishes the hut and the dad is inside the old hut. And he comes, Dad, I did it. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's ready. And he's like, Are you sure? Are you sure? And he was like, Yes, it is. And so he comes out with his cane, and he busts a hole in the hut. And the dad's like, the son was like, If you didn't like it, you could have just told me. Like, why did you just make this hole in it? And there's like more details, but the dad eventually says, wounds create the opportunity for connection, is essentially the message
Oh.
that comes from that. And right before that, I was on Instagram, as I tend to be on Sundays. Um, and this man who talks about attachment styles and wounds and childhood wounds and how these show up in our intimate relationships with our partners.
Hmm.
Before the story I read said, over communicating isn't the way to solve what's going on in these wounds that keep being brought up in arguments.
Oh man. Yes.
And,
Can you just like appear in the room magically when I need to hear that?
yes.
Thank you.
And in a perfect world, there would be no wounds. There would be no need for healing. And for some reason, right, like when we think, like, I'm going to bring up the story of Adam and Eve because that's the story that I know of the way that humans, like humans created the way that we are now, right? Like if evolution happened and then it was Adam and Eve, in order to be more of us, something had to happen, right? Like whatever the story of creation or evolution is to anybody, there still needed to be two people. and and somehow, even in this paradise that's described in the Bible, and in this perfect thing, right? Like when we think of higher powers and specifically in Christianity, it's like then this sin happened. But when you believe that a higher power or something greater than you is able to control us or guide us, right? Like when people say, like, well, why are there so many bad things happening in the world if there's a higher power? But even the higher power has said wounds have to happen for you to be able to live and to live fully. That's why we have free will, right? Like that's a part of life is free will in whatever you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there wasn't wounds, there would be no need for like your own investigation or your own archaeology of self, like Sister Yoli would say.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And they're right being present even with surrender, with the I think I shared this story already, but it just reminds me of one of the mothers that we sat with in India who one of my teachers was asking her a question about, but I feel such suffering when children are suffering, and that is a very shortened version of the conversation. But the mother was explaining, of course you do. You're a mother. Of course you feel the suffering of children. Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know the whole story. We don't Humans are not capable of knowing the whole story. There's so much more than we can understand. I'm paraphrasing in a big way. But she really asked us to surrender to, we don't know why that's happening. And it's not our job to understand why that's happening. It doesn't mean we don't do something, right? It doesn't impact whether or not we take action, but the resistance, I guess, there it is again, of like the resistance of like, this shouldn't be happening may actually prevent us from taking action.
Right.
Because we get stuck there. But being present with it, even being present with someone, that's empathy, being present with somebody else's suffering without falling into suffering ourselves is healing. Yeah. Because on the other, there's the mirror neurons again. We observe somebody receiving empathy. We observe somebody receiving mercy. And we probably actually get to experience that with our mirror neurons in some way. We probably release oxytocin. I don't know. Don't quote me on that for sure. But I wonder. Now I'm wondering, like, what are our hormones doing? What is our endocrine system doing when we show mercy and receive mercy? Like that, because healing is not just, it isn't intellectual, actually. It's a very integrated process.
Yeah, something that came up in the classes this last week, in the mentoring classes I mentioned earlier, was the way that your body feels things, right? Like your body is the first thing that starts to signal something is going on. Something feels really good. Something doesn't feel very good. The way your shoulders clench or the way you hold your hands, right? Like if your hands are like really tight. If your face feels very tense. And and I don't know what it is about, and I don't know how it happens for in other people. I just know how it happens for me, or how it happened for me. But pulling yourself more into yourself, and that's like hard, right? Like, do I really want to feel all of the things in my body?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I really want to deal with the trauma that people say my hips carry? Probably. I don't. I guess at the time I didn't know until I was like, fine, sure, let's do that. And now we have, and now we are here. So like, there's that like very intentional, like playing with your curiosity, right? Because curiosity shows up and says like, and however it shows up, it could be, it could just be a random thing you read on a bulletin board or something you scroll past on social media. But somehow there's things that the world, that like spirit, energy, God, the universe, different deities, they sort of just come in and push this curiosity button, and the individual then says, I have the capacity to interrogate this a little bit more. Or says, actually, not right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's something that you must interrogate, I really believe that spirit honors that and then comes back and says, okay, maybe now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to interrogate now? Because work needs to happen in this space, or this thing in your body needs attention. And I'll respect that you're not ready, but I'm going to remind you. And that's where like that like internal rough and tumble pushes and pulls of, okay, I'm ready, okay, I'm not ready, okay, like even if I'm not ready, I have to.
Mm-hmm.
um
I feel like this is a really intense part of anti-bias work when a
mm-hmm,
center has decided to really embrace that work and that
mm,
pedagogy, because everybody we I did just flipped back and found your words from you were just talking about how different bodies, because of our social identity, essentially experience different
mm-hmm,
kinds of work.
mm-hmm,
And so people misunderstand what they misunderstand what participation looks like for different people.
yeah.
For some people, showing up in that room takes a lot of energy and work.
Right.
For other people, saying what they think strongly, even if they're nervous to say it, takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it might take the same amount of work for those two people to do those very different things.
Right.
And the person who says things often thinks the other person isn't doing their share of the work or
Mm-hmm,
isn't there
mm-hmm.
for it. Or they take it personally, like, oh, that person doesn't like me. Or
Right.
that I feel like that is an important place to understand self love.
Mm,
I understand what my work is, and I'm not going to project my work onto somebody else. Right? There's the discernment of like what belongs to me, what belongs to them.
oh.
What do I excavate? Like I can't control somebody else's behavior, and
Mm-hmm,
I mean that's just like poking yourself in the eye.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
and then surrendering to what it is. And so if the last word in our sentence about surrender is healing, right? If I'm going to arrive at healing or come back again and again to healing,
mm-hmm,
then I really do need to let go of what I think that person thinks. And
mm,
that is so, we have a high concentration of people who are people in our field.
mm-hmm,
Obviously, we want that because we work
mm-hmm,
with
mm-hmm.
people, but it means that we often guess or we think we know what somebody else is feeling. And sometimes we think we're an empath. And I'm sure I have done this before. There's probably somebody listening right now who is like, oh my gosh, Lauren is such a hypocrite. But so I'm sorry if I did that to you. But just assuming that we know what somebody is experiencing, that we do have to let go of that, that we don't know what we don't know, and we will never understand what somebody else's experience is. Um, so we do
Maybe
have
that's
to.
mercy.
Mm, mm, mm.
Maybe that's mercy.
Yeah, true. I think that's a good place to play.
Right? I am thinking a lot about my last relationships, or that's what just came up. I hadn't even been thinking about those. um, and it makes me, and it there are moments where I feel like I should have been more merciful in those relationships.
Hmm.
And then there's another part of me, specifically in one of the two, where like I have to accept, or I had to, I think maybe I'm still accepting
Hmm.
that I would have lost myself if I would have given more mercy because of how unwell I had become.
Mhm.
And, and my dad would hear probably me say something like this, and he'd be like, "That's not true. You would have been able to do more." It's probably because that's his experience. But also, but also, but I also think like that's also like where humility comes in, right? And like the other like parts of the definition of what mercy was when you read it earlier. And also the reckoning that I am not a deity, I am not a god, I am a human.
Mhm.
And there's a reason why I'm a human,
Mhm.
right? Like and that in that same space I also should have mercy for myself and forgive myself for not being able to have given more,
Mhm.
right? Like it's that like interesting DNA strand, or even like the wave in our logo.
But it is that I think that, like, right, our bodies do send us messages, and that's what,
Mm-hmm.
if we listen to them, that helps us with discernment. And
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just thinking about my first marriage, and also wishing that I could have been able to give more.
right.
But my body just completely shut down, and recognizing that this was not a context for growing, and I really wanted to grow. I felt like there was just like I was walking around in a glass bubble, and I could see all of these things outside of the bubble, but I just couldn't reach.
Yeah,
And I liked the idea of being able to do it in the context of that relationship, but I couldn't figure out how. My body was not going to do it. It was like I
mine didn't either.
have to
Specifically,
go.
yeah, yeah, and it was the like I have to go because I I can't, and that's and as I said that, like there's this other thing that just like came in, like, but actually that's what needed to happen, right? Like when you think of surrendering
Mm-hmm.
to the way that life flows, right? Like if we view life as flowing, bringing water back into the space. I'm so happy that I'm home. I'm so happy that I got to meet the person I got to love after. Like I get to take care of my parents right now that they're sick.
Mm-hmm.
This afternoon they have this terrible cold for the listeners. And I got to take care of them today. And there's a high chance that my community will have a space for people to have therapy and mental health resources. And that feels really good. Right? Like when you view it from like the outside picture now of what's going on. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm.
Uh,
Surrender.
yeah.
Hello.
Okay, so that's more on that. And we have one more episode after this with one of our favorite teachers. Please join us for
Yes.
that. I can't wait to share it with you. And thanks for listening, everyone. Unless, Angela, do you have anything else for our listeners today?
No.
Very
Thank
good.
you,
Okay.
everybody. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. To keep the conversation going and find out more about our offerings, sign up for our mailing list.
And if you want to play more with in real time exploring these ideas in this episode, please come to the next campfire chat. We look forward to our next sacred conversation with you.
Check out the show notes for details.